All right, it was a saga that drew international attention. John McAfee, the software titan, the founder of the company by his own name more than 2 decades back, caught up in what the Belize government said was a murder in which he was not necessarily a suspect, but he was clearly being fingered, a neighbor of John's who was found dead. And John McAfee, I think that they even say to this day, they weren't saying you were the murderer. But they sure made it look that way.
The government at no point charged me with murder. They questioned all of my neighbors. They wanted to question me. I'd had a running battle with the government since the day that they stormed my property 6 months earlier with 42 armed soldiers, shot my dog, handcuffed me, kept me in the sun for 14 hours, and then released me with no charges.
Why did they do that at the time? Now that we should stress, this was before this murder, this 52-year-old American expatriate. But why?
Yes. Well, I made the mistake of moving to a district in Belize where it was the poorest district. The average salary is $5 or $6 a day. I had conspicuous wealth. I had brand new automobiles, large houses, clearly a lot of money.
But there were a lot of American expatriates who had the similar type of wealth, weren't there?
Right. The difference is they were living in San Pedro. I was the only one living in the jungles.
I see.
And so I was approached by a local politician suggesting that if I donated $2 million, I would get all kinds of benefits from the government, like land and tax benefits. Well, I had no businesses, and I didn't need land, and I said no. A week later, my property was stormed, and that happened. A week after that, they came back and said, "Have you reconsidered your decision?" I said, "No." I immediately called the U.S. press, the British press, everybody who would listen, and I told my story. That began a running war with the Belizean government, which ended in the death of my neighbor and their convenient ability to now collect me, put me in jail. They can hold you for questioning for up to 60 days without charges. If they're not satisfied, they can renew that for another 60 days and go on forever. I would have been in jail forever, sir. I had no intent on doing that.
But you knew this, the 52-year-old American expatriate, right? In fact, there had been some arguments in the past that you and him had serious differences. Then you discover, I think it was the day or days before, that your dogs had been poisoned. You had been complaining about your dogs. So they're saying there was a pattern of ill will between you two.
Well, in truth, I'd spoken less than 50 words to that man in the 5 years I had lived there. All of my neighbors were upset about my dogs. I had 11 dogs and they barked. I was upset with my dogs.
Who poisoned the dogs? Who poisoned them?
No, to this day, I have no idea. I thought it was the government that poisoned my dogs. I mean, they shot one of my dogs in front of my eyes at the river. I thought it was just more harassment from the government. That was the first thing that came to my mind. Not to belittle the death of my neighbor. I mean, it's a tragedy, but people are killed in Belize all the time. It is the murder capital of the world. Look it up.
So you were fingered in this, even though we should stress you were never accused of it, and to this day they have never accused you of it. You're a person of interest, I think is how they describe it.
I'm a person of interest.
But you got out of there. You want to get out of there because why?
Well, after 6.5 months of fighting the government and constant harassment, weekly harassment, I realized I cannot live here anymore. And if, in fact, they collect me for questioning, I will never get out of prison. So I simply refused to be collected. I went underground. I wore disguises, lived in swamps, slept in the jungle, moved from place to place throughout Belize for a month and a half until I finally escaped into Guatemala.
Now, you're kind of a hard guy to miss. You stand out there, and yet you were able to evade their attention somehow. What kind of disguises did you use? What did you do?
I think my favorite disguise is where I've enhanced the wrinkles on my face with eyeliner. I dyed my hair white. Didn't dye it. I used the old actor's trick of cornstarch in my hair and my beard, hunched over, got a cane, and walked with a shuffle. You know, no one paid me any attention. That was a favorite disguise. It is easy to disguise yourself if you distract attention from you to something else. The way you walk, the things you're carrying. The way you stand. So I was able to, and because I had to eat, I had to go and buy food, I had to get things, you know, so I did have to go out in public, and yet in a month and a half I was not one time detected.
It's weird because you're such a recognizable face, you know, but here you are back in the United States.
Yes, sir.
You left, you know, back to that darn money thing of mine. You left a lot of money on the table, and a lot of your assets, whatever you had, back in Belize. So what are you doing now in the United States?
Well, I'm working on a documentary, a feature-length documentary, a feature-length film, a biography that's being written by George Jung, who, by the way, is in prison and has been in prison for 19 years. He's the George Jung that the movie Blow was based on. I'm working on a comic novel with a gentleman named Chad Esley. I'm keeping busy.
You know, I read a lot of the stuff you write, a lot of the, I guess, emails you've passed along that you've written to friends, and you know, you're a very good writer, and it does remind me of why even your critics call you like a mad genius. You're talking about a friend. I was glad to hear your last email that you saw the visage of Jesus appear on you fresh out of a toaster English muffin a few Sundays back. I was curious how you recognize the image as belonging to Jesus, seeing as no one photographed or painted him in person. To my limited knowledge, the verbal descriptions are scant. You go on to mention some analogies that are very impactful, but they're not really, you're not saying anything crazy. It harkens back and says, you're not a madman, but I'm beginning to think you like to play a madman, a brilliant madman. Are you?
Joke, sir. That's what it amounts to, and I like to have as much fun as possible. Without laughter, what's the point, really? I mean, life is a fairly
but that's actually, no, that was a snide zinger, what you did. Well, actually, what you did just there. But also, you said, you know, the way you go after your critics with a humorous barb is a way to sort of disarm them. And I'm wondering whether that's a deliberate strategy.
Well, of course it's deliberate. I have critics. I mean, rather than get angry at them, let's make fun of them. Let's make fun of them indirectly by making fun of me. The question is, why not? What else am I to do? I mean, I am slandered, and there's still news reports that actually call me the man who murdered his neighbor, just blatantly, not even charged with it, just the man who murdered his neighbor.
Well, doesn't that just fester in you? Doesn't that just infuriate you?
I'm sorry?
Doesn't that just fester you and infuriate you?
Well, no, absolutely not. I mean, it's...
So you're not vindictive. You don't want revenge on these people who ripped you apart, or the company you founded, their management dismissing you, almost laughing at you.
Well, but that's their problem, not mine. I mean, I live my life. I'm very content with myself, and I know who I am. They don't. They haven't talked to me in 15 years, so what do they know? And the person writing an article...
I mean, you really created that. It was a great company. What you did, and I remember at the time you did it, it was incredible. And it was way ahead of its time. And what you were doing to address what you knew was going to be a virus-filled computer world was beyond ahead of its time. And yet now you have these guys who came in after the fact thinking that, you know, they landed on third base and think they hit a triple. You hit the triple.
That's it. I did. That is correct. And they were riding the name. But that doesn't make me mad. I mean, I left the company and started a new life. You know, what happened after that, other than the fact that people want to hang me because they associate me with that software, well, you know, that's not my business. And what people think of me, sir, is their problem. If you're angry at someone, you're the sufferer, not the person you're angry at, unless you reach out and smack them. No one's done that to me yet. They're just angry. Why should that make me angry?
All right. We could stick around for one quick minute. More John McAfee.
Yes, sir.
Right after this.
I will.
If you can't see without prescription